Every day, we're here for you. We get things off the ground, keeping you connected. We're here keeping you safe and secure. We keep things running smoothly and know the importance of giving back. Every day, we're here. ARA. Here for you. Here for good.
Welcome to Quick Wisdom by Everyday Greatness, and thanks for joining me. I'm your host, Barnaby Howarth. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we're recording this interview, the Guringai and Darug people of the Eora Nation. I'd also like to thank our venue today, the Asquith Bowling Club, and in particular the Secretary General, Mark Mabry, for so graciously inviting us and having us film here. If you'd ever seen a person sit on a couch, drinking beer and watching sport on TV and thought, what a mindless slob, that person might be undergoing a positive psychological exercise. My guest today, host of the Sport is Life podcast, Ian Hawkins, has been looking into the psychological benefits of watching sport on TV. And what he's found gives hope to all of us. Sport isn't just entertainment for Bogans. It can be having serious psychological benefits. It can help bring communities together and help viewers problem solve and help them to work out strategies to coach others. It might be taking the piss slightly to say that watching sport on TV is a guaranteed path to spiritual enlightenment, but it's most certainly not the blatant waste of time that a lot of people think it is. And to talk us through the positive benefits, I'd like to welcome to Quick Wisdom, Ian Hawkins. Ian, thank you for joining me and welcome to Quick Wisdom.
Cheers, Barnes. Thanks for having me, mate.
Now, you're something of a source of authority on the subject of watching sport on TV. You worked at Fox Sports for 18 years, but we'll get to that in a second, but you've had some pretty serious life challenges yourself. You had a life-changing moment as a young bloke. Talk us through that moment and how sport helped you cope with that.
Well, I'm not sure which moment you're referring to, but I had a couple of those big moments. I shattered my leg when I was 20, had a near-death experience where I had a pulmonary embolism, and people die from those things. So in my head it was like the clock was counting down to zero and I couldn't breathe, but it was like a dream state, and I didn't cross over, so I've got no stories about the other side, but yeah, this clock was counting down, and then the lady, the nurse finally got the oxygen on. So that was one of the stories that really changed and shaped my future, because it meant that I was no longer that fast, agile sports person. I had to learn new skills, and perhaps that's where more of the coaching came out, learning people with limitations what they need to be able to do. But really the big one was when in 2005, it was actually, funnily enough, it was 20 years 2 days ago since my dad passed, and that was just a moment that, it really rocked me, because I really felt like I had a disconnect with him. I always was trying to find ways to connect, and we just had our first child, and he was so good with children. This is going to be great. I can still remember how excited he was when I rang to say that we had our daughter, and then 10 months later he's gone, and it just rocked me, and it stopped me in my tracks in so many ways, but it also was the catalyst for me to start asking questions. I knew my life had to be better. He passed away at only 66. Like, nothing's guaranteed. I was living for retirement like other people will, and nothing's guaranteed. So I suddenly realised I wanted more from my life, and that was the catalyst.
Catalyst.
Yeah.
So we're told a lot these days that for the sake of our mental health, we should take time for ourselves and relax and not have to think. But then on the other hand, we're told that sitting on the couch watching sport, eating peanuts, is lazy. Is one of those pieces of advice wrong, or do we need a bit of each?
Well, I think it comes down to balance, right? Because you said, is it taking the piss? I think it is taking the piss a little bit, right? And I take offence to the question about bogan, because I consider myself a bogan. I'm a NRL watching Bogan, but I take your point, right? Like the episode of Sport is Life that you would have watched, I was talking about what the benefits of why men watch a lot of sport. I was thinking about it just for my own sake. Like you mentioned, I had 18 years at Fox Sports. I watched a lot of sport. Like if there was sport on, we were watching it, and a lot of times with your bigger bro Adam. And I probably took that for granted. But then towards the end, I actually started falling out of love with sport because it had just become so relentless and not enjoying it. And it probably took me 18 months from leaving Fox to actually get myself back into it and enjoy being a fan again. And then I started realising just how much I missed it and how much I enjoyed it. And so more recently, maybe it was me trying to justify to my wife why I'm watching so much sport. But I find myself like analysing. I find myself looking at different elements of it, and then I'm thinking, actually, this is actually something that men get a lot out of. It's a purposeful activity, and I know that you hear people talk about they had this moment where and they have this regularly, where they say something and then the commentator repeats it straight after, and that fills them with a lot of joy because they're getting that validation. They're realising that, well, okay, maybe I do know a bit about what I'm talking about. There's also, for me, I used to watch sport through the lens of watching how people connect, and it's still a lot of what I do now. Like I was the shy kid that observed relationships and what was going on, and I watched sport the same way. How can people who are in the state of origin, for example, they're teammates, and then they basically go to war for the sporting context with each other? Well, how would that work? And then if they both get selected for Australia, then how do they become connected enough to win? And all that sort of stuff fascinated me and still does, a lot of the work that I do now. So I guess that original podcast was to help maybe women understand what men are doing. Like sometimes I'll be yelling at the TV and my missus has learned just to humour me and yes, yeah, whatever. But that's me, I'm an external processor. So I need to get out of my head what I'm thinking. And I find all that really beneficial. It's not something that I would suggest that sitting on the couch and drinking 12 beers and a whole lot of packs of chips is going to be too good for you psychologically. But definitely, there are benefits. But again, like I said at the start, it's got to be about balance. You've got to be still doing it through the lens of putting what's going to be best for your health. So I'm certainly not passive. I still do a lot of exercise and I'm still really active, and I think that's an important caveat for us to put in there, that this is not about promoting being a couch sitting slob, shall we say.
Okay. I was hoping that would be up this episode.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned there you do a bit of coaching. How do you tell high performing people that want more out of life, that sitting on the couch and watching sport is okay and actually good for you?
Well, it's generally been, when I'm working with someone at that level, I'm not telling them how to play. I'm actually helping them with their personal life so that they get that in order, so that the rest of it will take care of itself. Anyone who's had a child, I know you have, like you suddenly have a purpose beyond everything else that you do. And you see it all the time in elite sport where these athletes, after they become parents, they seem to go to another level and they're not so stressed about they still want to win, but they're not getting themselves as caught up in the emotion of it. And so they're able to actually perform at a high level because they've got that sense of purpose. So when there's that ability for people to find purpose beyond just what they're doing, then it changes everything. Now, for some of them, it will be sitting there watching particularly their sport, analysing it, and they like the detail of the data and they're able to go, okay, well, problem solve. What could we have done differently there? What could I do differently if I'm taking that forward? If it's an elite coach, it's like watching what the best do, unpacking it, and then going, okay, if we can, how can we repeat that? There's a big thing in being able to model what other people do. There's some great work in and around neuro-linguistic programming about how you can basically observe someone, and with the right structure, you can get into the headspace that they're in when they're performing that way and be able to model what they're doing. Kids do it from a young age. We we see from the very youngest age, they will replicate our movements, our mannerisms, our word, our language. They do it perfectly. But then adults, well-meaning adults, parents like us, try and correct them, overcorrect them, give them too much advice, and they lose that ability. But we can reconnect to that. We can get back to that ability to model people, repeat patterns. Imagine being able to stand on the tee and hit it by a tiger. Yeah?
You wouldn't go broke.
No, you would not. But you'd enjoy it. I mean, there's obviously some genetic things that need to come into it as well, but you'd enjoy your golf so much more.
True.
So it's tapping into those elements of sport that, in the personal development world, these things we do a lot, and they're only really scratching the surface of what's possible in the elite sport landscape. It's really cool to see them take on more of that mindfulness, and they're getting more connected through the breathing. I'm seeing a lot of teams doing that. That's really cool. Again, there's so much more that can be done. That's what I'm passionate about sharing.
So, if we stick with that metaphor about the neurolinguistics, what sport leaders, like sports people and coaches, do you model your behaviours on in life?
Yeah, and I was thinking about this question. I probably don't model myself on that. I do model myself on different things I've picked up from a whole lot of different areas. In saying that, I do read and listen to many elite sports people. I love any of those interviews. There's the Howie Games podcast has got some fantastic interviews with elite guys. Mark Boros he interviews people who are at the top level across all different fields. Listen to Trent Robinson on there talking about his upbringing, and his dad sounded like a real hippie, and he was doing things that I'm talking about now. He was doing energy healing and all this sort of stuff that you would never hear in a elite sports space. But here's this guy who's been hugely successful as a coach. He's using that as something that is just what he does. I'm sure he explains it in a different way than what his dad did to him, because it's got to make sense for the people he's coaching. But yeah, I just try to pick up bits and pieces from everyone, and what I've learned from my dad, from my mum, from my older brother, from a whole lot of different people that have wisdom, and our children. Like, we learn so much from them if we're prepared to just take a moment and let them they pretty much hold a mirror up to us and show us all our flaws by acting out the different good and bad characteristics that we have.
Black Mirror. So you talked a bit about energy there, mostly from a hippie Trent Robinson's dad point of view, but what sort of energy is there when communities come together and watch sport together, either on television or live?
So, again, I think I shared this in that episode. I used to, as a long-suffering para fan, I'm a season ticket holder now, so I go because I'm a member and I love it. But back then, sometimes when I wake up, I'm like, do I really want to go this week? And usually the answer was no, but I'd force myself to go. And the moment I got into that precinct, and the buzz of the crowd, and there's people there, and you feel connected to your tribe, to your people, mate, there's nothing like it. Me and my son were the members of the cricket earlier this year, and nothing against those sort of people, but he did actually say to me, he goes, "Dad, these are not my people." And I'm like, yeah, because we've grown up kind of footy, and I still love the cricket. I still love getting into those spaces, but that's not culturally what we've done. It's not who we are. But I love getting in amongst that and feeling the energy of the crowd. If you look at it from a community level, you know what it's like at Pennant Hills, just how much that contributes to your life, how much it contributed to your life when you were playing at that high level, how much it contributed when you made that comeback, and it's at all levels. It's that sense of belonging, it's what it gives you in terms of course, health, but yeah, that community connection, and that, I'm sure you've had years where you weren't necessarily the best team, but you've had this connection that has brought you all together, that has just, you've achieved way beyond what you thought you could have, because of how good it feels. Like, the energy is like how good things can feel, and who doesn't love that?
Very well said. I think every amateur sports team should take note of that comment. It's all about focusing on the game plan, letting the result take care of itself. So let me ask you a personal question.
Yeah.
When you feel a bit flat and a bit fed up and just not really feeling great about life, what's your go-to sporting moment that pumps you up and makes you feel like life's okay and everything's good?
was usually putting on the Shane Warne highlights and watching, particularly in those early days. But probably the one that still gets me, and again, it's the timing thing, was when Australia finally qualified for the World Cup after 32 years.
Football.
It was the same year my dad had died. It was the November of that year, and because I was a passionate fan, and like that many heartbreaks, and that next day, the magnitude of what I've gone through of losing my dad, and the sheer relief and outpouring of emotion after that game. I was at the game. I nearly didn't go, but I'm like, I can't have gone to all these other games, and then the time that we qualify, I wasn't there. So I went, taking that risk that I might have my heart broken again. I had 2 months earlier when Para got knocked out of the prelims again, but I went, and the next day, it just sort of hit me, and I just wept, for probably 15 minutes. It was releasing so much grief around my dad. It was also just the disappointments of probably not just Socceroos, but all sport. It was hugely therapeutic experience by going through that. And I still, if I put that final penalty on, John O'Lewis in the top corner, you probably recite the commentary nearly, I still get tingles all over. It still just gives me a buzz watching that. It's so connected to my story and to my dad.
That's beautifully said. That's a beautiful answer. Ian Hawkins, thank you so much for joining me on Quick Wisdom. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. And I'm going to get out of this rain. Thank you to the ARA Group for being our major sponsor for the 9th season in a row. Thank you to Mark Mabry and the team at the Asquith Bowling Club for hosting us and letting us film at your venue. And thank you all for watching. I hope you can join us all again next week, where we'll talk more about how to find success using athlete mentality. Thank you again for joining us.
Every day, we're here for you. We get things off the ground, keeping you connected. We're here keeping you safe and secure. We keep things running smoothly and know the importance of giving back. Every day, we're here. ARA, here for you, here for good.